Nearly home. Isn't home where we all want to be? Reba here for Realtor.com, the pros' #1 most trusted app. Finding a home is like dating. You're not just looking for a place to live, you're searching for the one. That's where Realtor.com comes in. Like any good matchmaker, they know exactly where to look. With over 500,000 new real listings straight from the pros every month, you could find your perfect match today. Ranch style with a pool, barn dominium with an in-law suite? Realtor.com's got 'em. Modern craftsman with a big yard and a treehouse out back? Realtor.com will have you saying, yep, that's the one. No more swiping. It's time to start finding. Download the Realtor.com app today, 'cause you're nearly home. Make it real with Realtor.com.
Pros #1 most trusted app based on August 2025 proprietary survey. Over 500,000 new listings every month based on average new for sale and rental listings. July 2024 to June 2025.
Welcome to the Visions of War podcast series.
Presented by me, Bob Carruthers. I'm honoured to have been making military history documentaries for the past 30 years. And in that time, I'm proud to have won an Emmy Award. But more importantly, I've also discovered and shared some great primary source material concerning the history of warfare.
The Visions of War podcast is brought to you with a huge array of informative insights and discussions
Covering every aspect of military history.
You'll find Visions of War wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm sure you won't be disappointed.
Today we're going, well, beyond the usual stories, really digging into the German U-boat war. Specifically, those critical first couple of years, 1939 to 41.
Yeah, it's often portrayed one way, but the reality on the ground, or rather under the water, was much messier.
Absolutely. It's the story of, incredible effort, but also just crippling technical problems and, frankly, organizational chaos.
Right.
So our mission here is to look at the source material, see how close Germany actually came in those early days, and maybe understand why that initial phase didn't quite work out for them.
And when you do dig into those sources, that romantic idea of the invincible U-boat ace, it kind of evaporates pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The reality was just constraint, massive resource gaps. It wasn't David versus Goliath. It was more like David with a faulty slingshot.
Right. And the sources make that clear from page 1. The Kriegsmarine, the German Navy, was just not ready. They kicked off the war with only 57 commissioned U-boats.
57.
Yeah. And Admiral Dönitz, who was heading up the U-boats, the FO U-boats, he figured they needed at least 300 for any decisive impact on British shipping.
So less than a fifth of what he thought was the bare minimum.
Exactly. Just totally inadequate.
And that immediately forced a big argument, didn't it, about strategy. The main naval staff, Raiders people, they initially wanted the U-boats going after warships.
Standard naval doctrine, I suppose?
Sure. But Dönitz, seeing his tiny force and the equally weak German surface fleet, he basically said, no way. Only my U-boats can hit Britain where it hurts their supply lines.
So how did he swing that? I mean, pushing back against the top brass right at the start of a war.
Well, the numbers kind of packed him up, didn't they?
Yeah.
What else did they have that could even reach the main Atlantic routes consistently?
Good point. Not much.
So the operational focus shifted pretty quickly to merchant shipping. Dönitz got central control of the boats operating out in the Atlantic, the West, they called it. Others handled the Baltic.
And they had to be smart about deploying the few boats they had. Different types for different areas.
Exactly. The little Type 2, they could really only manage the North Sea, maybe the English coast. The Type VS, the workhorses, went west of England into the Bay of Biscay.
Okay.
And the few really long-range ones, the Type I and IX, they could push much further south towards Gibraltar or the Azores.
And that initial setup, the sources call it a very thin, wide-meshed network.
Yeah, west of England. They were basically gambling, betting that Britain would take, weeks, maybe longer, to get convoys properly organized.
A window of opportunity they desperately needed.
They needed it. And they had some early wins, like U-29 sinking the carrier Courageous. That was a big propaganda coup.
Huge target.
But it came at a cost. They lost 2 U-boats almost immediately after. Swings and roundabouts. But the Athenia incident, that really shows the internal pressures.
Ah, yes, U-30. Lieutenant Limp sinking a passenger liner.
Yeah, he sank it right at the start of the war. Mistook it for an armed merchant cruiser, an auxiliary cruiser. Politically, it was a disaster.
I bet.
Dönitz got orders from the very top. Keep it quiet. Absolutely secret. But the operational impact for you as the commander was Hitler stepping in and forbidding attacks on any independent passenger liners. Full stop.
So another constraint right out of the gate, having to identify and hold fire on certain targets?
Exactly. And it was just the first of many times politics would tie the U-boat's hands, tactically speaking.
Okay, so that's the strategic setup, but it feels like that initial constraint was almost minor compared to what hit them next.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about the torpedo crisis, because this seems to define everything for almost 2 years. It shifts from strategy to just failure.
It's kind of mind-boggling when you read the accounts.
Yeah.
The sheer scale of the technical failure. Almost from day one, September 39, the magnetic pistols in the torpedoes started failing.
How did they fail?
They called them prematures. The torpedo would just explode way too early, sometimes right at its safety limit, like 250 meters out.
So not only a miss.
Worse, the explosion tells the target and any escorts, hey, there's a U-boat right here, gives away your position completely.
Nightmare. So, okay, magnetic pistols are out. They switch to the backup, the impact detonators.
Right, the contact detonators.
Yeah.
Seemed logical, but that just uncovered an even worse problem, something nobody expected.
Which was?
A massive depth-keeping defect. The torpedoes weren't running at the depth they were set to. They were running deep.
How deep?
Consistently deep. Reports showed anywhere from 1.75 to nearly 2.7 meters too deep.
Wow. So even if you aimed perfectly.
It just sails right underneath the target, especially shallower draft ships. Think about trying to hit a destroyer, an escort vessel.
Almost impossible. The very thing you need to eliminate to get at the convoy.
Precisely. It's hard to overstate the impact. What's the psychological toll on a crew? You do everything right, perfect approach, perfect shot, and your weapon fails. Again and again.
Yeah, you can imagine the frustration. The reports must have been grim.
They were. Dunitz himself estimated they lost out on sinking at least 300,000 tons of shipping, purely because of these failures in that early phase. But maybe more importantly, confidence just cratered.
In the weapon itself.
Completely. You had experienced commanders like Gunther Prien, a hero after Scapa Flow, reporting absolute textbook shots, sitting ducks, and the torpedoes just fail. Morale went through the floor.
And the strategic implication, that failure gave the Allies time, didn't it?
So much time. That's the crucial takeaway here. It wasn't just lost tonnage for the Germans. It was maybe 18 months, maybe more, gifted to the Allies.
Time to do what?
Time to develop their convoy tactics, build more escorts, improve their anti-submarine weapons, their detection gear, everything. It was a strategic blunder Germany just couldn't afford.
And this whole crisis really came to a head during the Norway campaign, Operation Hartmut, in April 1940.
Yeah, dramatically so. For Norway, the U-boats were pulled off the shipping lanes. Their job was purely naval. Block the fjords, stop Allied landings, support the invasion.
So directly engaging warships, prime targets.
Exactly. And they were often in perfect position. But the results were just abysmal.
How bad?
Post-action analysis was damning. Out of 12 clear attacks on cruisers, the analysts figured 7 should have been dead, certain hits. 7 misses or duds on cruisers alone.
Unbelievable.
It got so bad, so concentrated in that northern theater, that the technical officers basically concluded their torpedoes were unusable, north of latitude 62 degrees 5 minutes north.
Why? Something to do with the magnetic field up there.
That was the suspicion, yeah. Magnetic interference messing with the already dodgy pistols. Prien famously reported perfect sitting shots on transports, cruisers, just sitting at anchor, and nothing. Fail, fail, fail.
Just devastating for the crews who put themselves at risk for those shots. What happened organizationally? Heads must have rolled.
Oh, definitely. There was a major investigation. Admiral Rader himself eventually confirmed what the crews already knew. Both the magnetic and impact systems were fundamentally flawed.
And accountability.
Led to courts-martial for some of the torpedo development folks. But fixing the actual problems, that took time. It really wasn't until mid-1940 that they started getting reliable torpedoes again.
Okay, so nearly a year of fighting with essentially broken weapons. But just as that crisis starts to resolve, Germany gets a massive, unexpected strategic gift.
Right. The fall of France, June 1940.
Which gave the U-boats those Atlantic bases, Lorient, Brest, Saint-Nazaire. This kicks off the famous happy time, doesn't it?
It really does. Getting those French ports in July 1940 was, well, a total game changer. The sources are really clear on the immediate impact.
How so? What was the main benefit?
Transit time. Simple as that. Instead of sailing all the way from Germany around the British Isles, now they could dare straight out from the Bay of Biscay into the Atlantic convoy routes.
Cutting down the travel time significantly.
By at least a week per patrol, probably more. and the knock-on effect, it meant a much higher percentage of your boats were actually on station hunting at any given time. The estimate is it effectively boosted the operational force by 25% instantly.
Wow, just by geography.
Just by geography. And now, with working torpedoes finally arriving and closer bases, Dönitz could really implement his preferred tactic, the wolf pack.
Rudeltaktik. Coordinated attack.
Exactly. Something they really couldn't do effectively in World War I because the radio tech wasn't there. Now, they had better comms. A U-boat finds a convoy, radios its position.
Calls in the pack.
Calls in the pack. They'd shadow it, often waiting for night, then launch a coordinated surface attack from multiple directions, overwhelm the escorts.
And this worked?
Spectacularly for a time. Look at convoys SC-7 and HX-79 in October 1940. Just devastating losses for the Allies. This was the peak, the happy time.
Did they try to bring in allies? I know the Italians had submarines.
They did try. Italian boats were brought under German command at Bordeaux later in 1940. Beatism, it was called.
How did that go? More forces, more eyes on the water.
Not quite. It turned out to be, well, mostly a failure. Dönitz's assessment, according to the sources, was pretty blunt. Quite useless.
Why?
The Italian crews generally just didn't have the same level of operational training or experience in the Atlantic conditions. Their sighting reports were often late, inaccurate, sometimes even incomprehensible to the German controllers. It just didn't add much real capability. More hassle than help, it seems.
Okay, so the happy time, fueled by French bases and finally working torpedoes. But it couldn't last forever. By 1941, things started getting tougher again.
Yeah, the tide began to turn. Even if Germany was finally getting more U-boats into service, the Allies weren't standing still.
How were they hitting back?
Two main ways. First, more escorts, just sheer numbers. Instead of maybe 2 or 3 destroyers with a convoy, you started seeing 6, 7, 8. Much harder to penetrate that screen.
And the second?
Air power. Critically, continuous air covers started reaching further out, those big Sunderland flying boats.
Coastal Command.
Exactly. They started pushing the U-boats further and further west. West of the 20-degree west longitude line became the key marker.
Why was 20 West so important? Explain that for us.
Because, roughly speaking, that was the limit of effective land-based air cover from Britain and Iceland at that point. Beyond 20 West, the U-boats entered the mid-Atlantic air gap, where they were relatively safe from planes.
Good.
But operating that far west meant much longer transit times again, fewer encounters, more fuel burned just getting there and back. The Allies were effectively shrinking the U-boats' hunting grounds, pushing them away from the coastal choke points. And Germany still didn't have Dönitz's magic number of 300 boats.
Right. Still way short. So let's look at 1941 more closely. It seems like a year where external pressures and internal constraints really started to bite hard. Dönitz needed eyes in the sky, right? Air reconnaissance.
Desperately. Finding convoys in the vastness of the Atlantic was like finding needles in a haystack. He knew long-range aircraft were essential.
Well, getting them wasn't easy.
Not at all. He had a major bureaucratic battle, particularly with Hermann Goering and the Luftwaffe. Goering didn't like subordinating his aircraft to the Navy.
Typical inter-service rivalry.
Textbook case. Dönitz did eventually win a partial victory. He got Group 1 of KG-40, the unit flying the Focke-Wulf 200 Condors, tactically assigned to his command in early 41.
The famous Condors, scourge of the Atlantic.
Well, yes and no. They had successes, but there were never enough of them. And their reconnaissance wasn't always reliable. Reports could be off by, 60, 70 miles sometimes. Hard to vector a wolf pack onto a target with that kind of inaccuracy.
So helpful, but not the silver bullet he needed.
Not really. And then there was the ongoing political interference. We mentioned the Athenia rules.
It got worse in 41.
It did, especially concerning the United States. As tensions rose, Hitler became obsessed with avoiding incidents. Strict orders came down. Do not attack U.S. ships, even if they're clearly carrying war supplies to Britain.
Another tactical headache.
But the really big one, the one that baffled commanders in the field, came mid-1941, an order forbidding attacks on non-hostile warships.
Wait, non-hostile? Like what?
Like destroyers or corvettes escorting a convoy. If those specific ships weren't, say, actively dropping depth charges on you at that exact moment, the primary escort vessels.
You're kidding. So you're in the middle of a convoy battle trying to sink merchant ships, and you're told you can't shoot at the destroyers protecting them unless they shoot first.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You had to try and sneak past the shepherds to get at the sheep, even though taking out the shepherds was the obvious tactical move. It was crippling. Commanders were furious.
I can't even imagine. Talk about fighting with one hand tied behind your back.
And on top of all that, the U-boats were constantly being pulled away for other jobs. secondary tasks. Dönitz called them wild goose chases.
Like what kind of things?
All sorts. Weather reporting was a big one. They needed weather data from the Atlantic for planning air raids, naval operations. So 2, 3, sometimes 4 U-boats were permanently assigned just to sit out there and transmit weather reports.
Using frontline combat submarines as weather stations.
Yep. Then there was reconnaissance for the surface fleet. When the battleship Skier was planning a sortie, they pulled, I think, 8 U-boats off patrol just to scout for. A sortie that was then canceled.
8 boats. That's a significant chunk of the operational force at the time.
Huge. And transport duties, too. Ferrying supplies, even aviation fuel to places like Norway. Dönitz hated it. Every boat doing those jobs was a boat not sinking tonnage in the Atlantic, which he saw as the only decisive theater.
That constant drain must have been frustrating. And then came the really big strategic diversion in late 41, the Mediterranean.
Yeah, that was a killer blow to the Atlantic campaign's momentum. The Axis situation in North Africa was looking shaky. Rommel needed supplies. Malta was a problem.
So resources were shifted.
Massively. Around 50 U-boats were ordered into the Mediterranean or to operate right at the Strait of Gibraltar entrance. 50.
50 boats pulled from the main Atlantic fight. What was the effect?
It pretty much stalled the Atlantic campaign, just as more Type Vs were finally becoming available. And the Med itself, particularly the Strait of Gibraltar, it became known as a mousetrap.
A mousetrap? Why?
It's incredibly dangerous water for a submarine. Heavy Allied patrols, obviously, but also difficult underwater conditions, strong currents, weird acoustic layers. Very hard to operate, very easy to get caught.
High losses.
Very high losses getting through the strait.
Yeah.
And once a boat was in the Med, getting it back out for repairs or refit at the French bases was extremely difficult. They were essentially trapped in a high-risk, lower-priority theater. A major strategic error in hindsight for the U-boat war.
Okay, so technical failures, political meddling, resource drains, and then there's this final, really unsettling issue that starts to surface in 1941.
Security.
Yes. The suspicion that the British knew too much. It started with whispers, commanders reporting strange things.
Like convoys making sudden, unexplainable course changes just before a wolf pack was about to attack. U-boats feeling like they were being hunted with unnatural precision, even far out in the Atlantic.
Coincidences. Or something more.
Well, the sources confirmed that within the U-boat command, the worry grew throughout 41. Was it just bad luck? Or were their codes compromised? Was there a leak somewhere?
Was there a specific incident that really fueled these fears?
The Terrifil Bay incident in September 41 is often cited. 2 U-boats were refueling from a supply ship in a supposedly secret bay in the Cape Verde Islands. A British submarine surfaced right on top of them and attacked.
How could they possibly know they were there?
Exactly. It screamed compromised intelligence, either a leak back home in the Admiralty structure or worse. The ciphers themselves weren't secure. While official investigations at the time tried to find other explanations, the pattern of interceptions, the unlucky encounters, it was becoming hard to ignore.
So that really brings us to the end of this initial crucial phase, isn't it? Late 1941.
Yeah, it's a good point to pause and take stock.
Looking back at 39 to 41, the story isn't really about overwhelming success. It's defined, as you said, by that crippling shortage of boats right at the start, compounded by that absolute disaster with the torpedoes.
Those 2 factors alone gave the Allies a massive head start. Almost 2 years to breathe, to learn, to adapt, to build up their defenses. Time they used very effectively.
Forcing the U-boats further and further west into less productive waters.
Exactly. And then layered on top of that, you have the political constraints, the diversion of boats to other theaters like the Med, and this growing, deeply worrying shadow of potential code breaking.
They were fighting blindfolded, potentially, against an enemy who could increasingly see their hand.
That's a good way to put it. It sets the stage for the later phases of the Battle of the Atlantic, but this early period shows just how precarious the German position was, despite the surface image.
Which leaves us with a pretty stark final thought, doesn't it, for you listening? Imagine a different history. What if those torpedoes had worked flawlessly from day one? What if Dönitz had had, say, even 150 or 200 boats in 1940 during that happy time, with working weapons and secure communications? Could they have actually severed Britain's lifeline before the Allies fully mobilized their defenses, before American industrial might truly came into play?
That's one of the big what-ifs of the war, isn't it? That window of opportunity in 1940-41, it might have been Germany's best, perhaps, real chance to win the Battle of the Atlantic. And it slipped away.
A sobering thought indeed.
If you found this episode helpful, informative, or entertaining, be sure to hit follow or subscribe in your podcast app. You'll get our new episodes for free, and it tells the platform we're doing a good job. It takes 30 seconds, but leaving a review is a massive help. It's the main way new listeners find out if this show is right for them. We read every single one. Thanks from all the Visions of War podcast team.